The first thing Rachel Hollis noticed about her new husband's house was the photographs. Not the ones of him. Those were expected. A man living alone for 7 years accumulates photographs of himself the way he accumulates everything else. Slowly, without intention, filling the empty spaces. No. What Rachel noticed were the ones that had been removed. She could see where they had been. The faint rectangles on the walls where the paint was slightly darker. The small holes where the nails had been. The dust lines on the shelves where frames had stood for years before being taken down. Someone had been here, in these photographs, and someone had decided she should not see them. She assumed it was his ex-wife. She was wrong. Rachel Hollis met Daniel Voss at a friend's dinner party in the spring of 2019. He was 44 years old. She was 38. He was quiet in the way that some men are quiet. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they have learned that saying less makes people lean in closer. He had dark eyes and a way of listening that made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. He told her he was a structural engineer, that he had been married once before, briefly, and that it had ended amicably. That he had a house outside the city that he had been meaning to renovate for years but never quite got around to. He made her laugh 3 times over dinner. He called the next morning. They dated for 11 months. He proposed on a Tuesday evening in February, at home, with no ceremony, just a ring on the kitchen counter and a question asked quietly, like he wasn't sure of the answer. She said yes. They were married in April. Small ceremony, 12 guests. His side of the family was represented by a single cousin named Paul, who flew in from Vancouver and left immediately after the reception. Rachel thought that was a little strange, but she told herself that some families are like that, scattered, distant. It didn't mean anything. She was wrong about that, too. They moved into Daniel's house 2 weeks after the wedding. It was a large house for 2 people, 4 bedrooms, a study, a basement that Daniel used as a workshop, set back from the road on a property that backed onto a narrow strip of forest. The kind of house that would be beautiful once someone put the time into it. Rachel started unpacking. She moved through the rooms slowly, learning the house the way you learn a person, by the details they leave behind without meaning to. That was when she noticed the rectangles on the walls. She asked Daniel about them that evening, casually, over dinner. He said they were photographs of his ex-wife, that he had taken them down before Rachel moved in, that he hadn't thought it was appropriate to have them up. Rachel said that made sense. She believed him for about 3 weeks. The first thing that didn't add up was the name. Rachel had never asked her husband's ex-wife's name. It hadn't seemed necessary. The marriage was over. The woman was gone. What did the name matter? But one evening, she was going through a box of documents she had found in the study. Old bills, receipts, warranties for appliances. And she came across a copy of Daniel's previous marriage certificate. She wasn't snooping, she was organizing. The certificate listed Daniel's first wife as Margaret Ann Voss, née Carroll, married June 12, 2009, in the county of Whitmore, Vermont. Rachel set the certificate down. She picked up her phone. She typed the name into a search engine the way you do when curiosity overtakes propriety. Quickly, before you can talk yourself out of it. The first result was not a social media profile. It was an obituary. Margaret Ann Voss, née Carroll, died October 3rd, 2016. Survived by her parents and her brother, Thomas Carroll, of Burlington, Vermont. There was no mention of a husband. Rachel read the obituary 3 times. Then she set her phone face down on the desk. Then she picked it up again and read it a 4th time. She did not ask Daniel about it that night. She told herself she needed more information before she said anything. She told herself there was probably a simple explanation. People are left out of obituaries for all kinds of reasons. Families are complicated. Estrangements happen. She told herself she was not afraid. She was. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel researched Margaret Voss carefully and quietly. She used her work laptop. She cleared the search history each time. What she found was this. Margaret Ann Voss had died at the age of 37. The cause of death listed in the obituary was cardiac arrest. She had been found in her home, the same house that Rachel now lived in, by a neighbor who had come to return a borrowed book. There had been an investigation, brief, inconclusive. The medical examiner had found nothing to indicate foul play. Margaret had a history of a minor heart condition. The death was ruled natural. The case had been closed in 3 weeks. Rachel sat with this information for a long time. Then she started looking for something she hadn't thought to look for before. She searched Daniel Voss's name alongside the words, previous marriage. She found something she had not expected. Daniel has been married before, Margaret. Her name was Susan Crane, married to Daniel Voss in 2003. The marriage had lasted 4 years. Rachel searched for Susan Crane. She found another obituary. Susan Crane, Voss. Died January 14th, 2008. She was 34 years old. Cause of death, accidental drowning. She had been found in the lake behind the property she shared with her husband in rural Vermont. No charges had been filed. The case had been closed in 11 days. Rachel Hollis had been married to Daniel Voss for 43 days when she found the second obituary. She closed her laptop. She sat very still for a long time. She listened to the house around her, the particular quiet of a large house set back from the road, the trees at the edge of the property, the sound of Daniel moving around somewhere downstairs. She thought about Susan Crane, who had drowned in a lake. She thought about Margaret Voss, who had died of cardiac arrest in this house. She thought about the rectangles on the walls where photographs had been removed, and she thought about something Daniel had said to her on their 3rd date, laughing over a bottle of wine when she had asked him why he had taken so long to start dating again after his divorce. He had said, "I just needed time. After everything that happened, I needed time to become the person I wanted to be again." At the time, she had thought it was a beautiful thing to say. She was not sure what she thought now. She called her sister, Laura, that evening, while Daniel was in the shower. She kept her voice low. She stood in the walk-in closet, with the door pulled most of the way shut. She told Laura what she had found. She said it quickly, in the way you say things when you are afraid of being overheard, or afraid of how the words sound out loud. Laura was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Rachel, you need to leave that house." Rachel said she wasn't sure. She said she might be reading too much into it. She said 2 deaths wasn't proof of anything. Laura said, "Rachel, 2 dead wives, same man. You need to leave." Rachel said she would think about it. She did not leave that night. 3 days later, she called the Whitmore County Sheriff's Department. She spoke to a deputy who listened politely and took notes and told her that both cases had been investigated and closed. She asked if they could be reopened. The deputy said that would require new evidence. She asked, what would constitute new evidence? The deputy paused. Then he said carefully, "Something that wasn't available at the time of the original investigation." Rachel thanked him. She hung up. She sat in her car in the parking lot of the grocery store for 40 minutes. Then she drove home. What happened next took courage that Rachel Hollis did not know she had. She went back through the house, methodically, room by room. She was looking for something she couldn't name, something that felt like evidence but that she wouldn't recognize until she found it. She found it in the basement, in Daniel's workshop, in a locked cabinet that she had assumed contained tools. The key was on his keyring. She had made a copy 3 weeks earlier. On the same afternoon, she had found the second obituary, without quite knowing why. Inside the cabinet, tools, boxes of hardware, a set of shelving brackets still in their packaging, and, at the back, behind a plastic storage container, a cardboard box sealed with tape. Inside the box, 2 photograph albums, old, the kind with sticky pages and clear plastic covers. The first album was labeled Susan. The second was labeled Margaret. Rachel sat on the basement floor and went through both albums. The photographs were ordinary, vacations, dinners, ordinary moments from ordinary lives. But on the last page of Margaret's album, someone had written a date. October 3rd, 2016, the day Margaret died. And, beneath the date, in small, careful handwriting, it took longer this time. Rachel photographed the page with her phone. She called her sister. She called a lawyer. She called the deputy from the Whitmore County Sheriff's Department. This time he listened differently. Daniel Voss was arrested on a Thursday morning in November, 14 weeks after his marriage to Rachel Hollis. The investigation that followed lasted 8 months. Forensic accountants found life insurance policies. Toxicologists re-examined samples that had been preserved from Margaret's autopsy and found traces of a compound that had not been tested for in the original investigation. The case of Susan Crane was reopened. The lake was searched. Items were recovered that had never been found. Daniel Voss was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty. He sat through the trial with the same quiet, attentive expression that Rachel had fallen in love with. The same way of listening that made you feel like the most important person in the room. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. They came back with 2 guilty verdicts. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Rachel Hollis sold the house. She moved to a different city. She started over. She does not give interviews. She has spoken publicly, exactly once, in a brief statement, released through her lawyer 6 months after the verdict. It said, "I think about Susan and Margaret every day. I think about the people who loved them. I think about the investigations that were closed too quickly. And I think about what would have happened if I had not looked, if I had told myself there was probably a simple explanation, if I had been afraid of what I might find." The statement ended with one sentence. It said, "Always look." There are 2 obituaries still online for Susan Crane Voss and Margaret Ann Voss. They have been viewed hundreds of thousands of times since the trial. People leave comments, messages of grief and anger and the particular helplessness that comes from learning about something terrible that has already ended. People say they are sorry. People say they cannot believe it. People say they hope the women are at peace. One comment appears on both obituaries. It was posted by an account with no profile photo and no other activity. It says only, "We see you. We are sorry we were too late. You deserved better." No one knows who wrote it, but whoever it was posted both comments at 3:17 a.m. on October 3rd, the anniversary of the day Margaret Voss died. They had done it every year since the verdict. Every single year, without fail. This story is fictional and created for entertainment purposes only.